crime. No one looks behind the curtain, and no one questions why. The only time we got is right about now. I cross my heart, I take the vow, I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end. Tonight's the test, tonight's the time. I am the punishment that fits the crime. I'll break the bricks, I'll pick the locks. I don't got nothing, but I'll give what I got. I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end.
Good evening, welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. I'm with you now, I'm with you to the end, and we try to keep pushing that end off and off and off a long way down the road, just like they kicked the budget deficit can down the road. We kicked the New World Order's ass down the road. Just a little more, little more, little more. It's Thursday night. We're in for a fright. They had the big leaders debate, not that it really matters much, but the one and only place where we can discuss what's really important, what's really true, is on Conspiracy Cafe here on that channel here in downtown Toronto, that channel that can use your help and support, this show that can always use your help and support, because that's what makes it happen. I don't know if you ever noticed, but when you read the American Constitution, it always started out with something that said, we the people. We don't beg for government grants, we don't get government grants, we don't definitely get corporate grants. So we're just out there on our pins and needles doing what we can, and your pins and needles can help us along the way, because today is the happy anniversary of NAFTA. Yes, indeed. Many long years ago, the traitors in Parliament and the Congress helped establish this North American Free Trade Agreement. Something that can just suck the blood out of our respective nations and give it over to large multinational corporations who will spend your children's inheritance over and over and over and over and over again, because you got stuck in the mud and were sleeping and let it come to pass. We trusted our leaders and they screwed us royally. They're working on another one. Of course, you probably didn't hear that in the presidential debate. They had a debate. They said, you know, we're having a presidential debate. And I know there are other people running for president other than the two morons, Heckle and Jekyll. Obama and Romney, the left and right hook of the power establishment. The two suckers sold down the river completely and totally. There are 5 names on the ballot. Everybody asks me at work, did you watch the debate? You watched the debate? I don't even have TV. Don't have TV, man. Couldn't care less. And why would I want to watch the debate between the fixed fight? The whole thing that's just a control mechanism to take over a good large part of the planet Earth and all the people within. Why would I want to participate in this illusion? If all 5 candidates were at the debate and we had a fair fight, that's worth watching. If they even mention the other 3 candidates, that might be a step in the right direction. The other candidates, of course, are the Libertarian candidate. He was a former governor of New Mexico. His name is Gary Johnson. And of course we have a Constitution Party, former Congressman Virgil Goode. And even though I'm not a Greenie and I don't really go for a lot of the Green Party stuff, they have a Green Party candidate for president, Dr. Jill Stein. But when I look over their foreign policy material, I could go, you know, we got a green curtain here on the wall for our Super Wonder camera machine to make it look like you could be anywhere on the planet Earth except here. I could go green because it makes a whole lot more sense than what these two turkeys are talking about. So I can tell you what they didn't talk about, and that's probably the substance of what should be in the debate, if there was a debate, a fair and honest, open debate. They said Romney, kicked Obama down and whatever, and I still got a lot of worry beads going about this twit becoming president of the United States, taking us into World War III. That's the main punch button, red button, nuclear button issue that they really don't talk about in great detail. But item one would be the North American Union. Operation Shipwriter. We got cops coming across the border, sworn in as cops on the other side of the border that aren't part of the other side of the border, and that's happening. Nobody talks about it, nobody cares. One day the Alabama Highway Patrol is going to be coming into Toronto, kicking somebody's ass and taking them back across the border, or maybe the Winnipeg PD will slip across the border and do something to some Americans. Maybe not, because Americans got the Second Amendment, and there's a whole lot of armed Americans, and they might not take a shine to something like that happening. But all this is done with tricks and mirrors and illusion, and that's okay. Then of course the big hot button issue that's coming up, it's going to involve many more countries, is this Trans-Pacific Partnership. So I'm sure nobody asked any questions in the debate about that, even though I didn't see the debate. I'll bet money that's probably the case. This Trans-Pacific Partnership is going to give corporations power that supersedes what we thought was power, our sovereign nation states. So that totally denudes of anything that resembles we the people from existing. Of course, that's not a debate issue or a debate question. Why should we ever bother to tell you what's really going on? Then another question, based on Mr. Ahmadinejad's UN debut, talked about the New World Order. So I'd like to ask these candidates, well, what kind of New World Order are you really working for here? And do I get fries with my New World Order? Do I get fried with this New World Order? See, they kind of leave all those little details out. Corporate media doesn't tell you, they don't tell you in this debate. But those are supposed to be the two top candidates. But I'll bet you if I asked the three other candidates some of these questions, I could get a very definitive answer and see a very definitive policy in all their platforms. Then another thing I'd want to see in the debate, strange Obama didn't do this one. You see, that's the trouble when you get into these debates. So you got one of these contenders who could just drop kick the other guy, lay him flat out on his ass. And he doesn't do it. He holds his punches. He holds his punches because he can't reveal anything that resembles the word conspiracy. Something secret. Something that infiltrates and takes over and destroys. Manifest evil. They can't even to win, they can't reveal the secret of the kingdom. So if I was Mr. Obama and I had to be in the debate, I'd be wanting that classic old song, because they do use dirty advertising on the Republican side, or maybe they could put it in a some kind of campaign commercial or something like that. But I get that classic old song, "I'm Your Puppet," from the days going back to Nam, and play that song while we see Mr. Romney controlled by Mr. Netanyahu as a puppet on a string. A man who openly admitted in his debates to become Republican leader that if he ever had an issue he couldn't figure out for himself, he'd call his good friend Netanyahu and he'd tell him what to do. Which is the whole crux of the matter is, when you're voting for Romney, you're voting for Netanyahu, and he's going to take control of that button and American troops. And he's the one who's going to start the next war that we don't need. So the only thing they do talk about, even though I didn't see the debate, but I know they talk about that, is they talk about what they're going to do with all the money they stole off you. So you pay a tax you do not owe, based on all the problems with the IRS and the Federal Reserve Bank and all the illusions and manifestations that come out of that evil. You give them your hard-earned money, and then they steal it from you and give it to somebody else or take it for themselves. And they talk about, one guy says, I'm going to give to the poor and take from the rich. And the other guy says, I'm going to take from the poor and give to the rich. Neither one of them are Robin Hood. They're just hoods. Both of them are hoods. The whole government is run by hoods. Front page of the Toronto Star today. The mafia lives in the open here in Canada. It's not like, remember in the old days, you see the movies, the Al Capone on the beach in Florida with the big cigar, chomping on that baby, feet up on a deck chair or something like that, relaxing in the hot sun. You don't do that anymore. Now you come to Canada. We welcome the mafia and organized crime kingpins with open arms. Why? Because our premier here in Ontario, from what I've heard, he's an expert at offshoring. all that ill-gotten loot with his brother, according to many sources that come and come and come and go and go and go. Our Prime Minister probably partakes of the same thing because, the mafioso are here in Canada. It's not like he's uninformed. He brought the former Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, who was the former Chief of Police in London, the former Police Chief in Toronto, the former Police Chief in York Region. The only thing he hasn't been is Commissioner of the RCMP, so they might give him that next to be a cabinet minister. He's Italian by birth, so he speaks the language. He's a paisan, was born in Italy, fascist Italy. Could still be, somebody rooting for the home team. He can't tell the Prime Minister, hey, we got mafia in Canada. Toronto Star's got to do it. But then, of course, maybe he's got, a lot of people said he had those offshore accounts too. They had a big inquiry. They said they couldn't find any because what a lot of the people doing the inquiry could never figure out is these accounts move in nanoseconds anywhere. So as soon as you have the slightest worry or concern, or maybe you just do it on a regular basis, is that you shift this money from country to country, bank to bank, account to account, and all the other accounts that it used to be in just cease to exist. It's just little bits on a computer. Data sheet to say, well, no, there's no such account, never was. Well, because we deleted all the records, they don't exist anymore. You need forensic accountants, forensic computer experts to go through everything to really find out where it is and follow this trail, which they're never going to do. They just call the bank and say, do you have an account so-and-so and so-and-so? And they'll say, well, no. Well, that's because it disappeared a day or 2 or 5 or a week before anybody ever thought to ask about it, and it manifested itself in a new country, in a new bank, maybe even in another currency. It just goes that fast. So the only way to really catch these turkeys is you got to follow every move they make. So you catch them live. You don't ask questions after it's over. They prepare that. They understand that. That's why they bring a lot of these chiefs of police and former executive officers into government. They know money laundering inside out. They do it in their sleep. Read that in a book on organized crime in Canada. They even set up phony banks to lure people in and did all kinds of transactions, maybe their own. It was done on a hush, hush, hush basis. You'd be lucky if 20 people tops knew that these operations ever went down. Even cabinet ministers were kept uninformed of some of these operations. So your average policeman in the street doesn't have a clue what happened, even your executive officers. They're good at it. Come to Canada. Bring all your ill-gotten gains. We'll look after them for you. Supposed to be a big protest going on all over the place for smart meters today, so it's probably too late for anybody to get out, but they do have a Yahoo information or group that you can probably find on your Yahoo search engine and dig out where they're going or coming next. They're all over the place. One of our faithful is actually really heavily involved in this in British Columbia, as these things are like, the devil's tool to spy on everything you do, give you radiation poisoning, and monitor, every little electron that comes and goes inside your house so they can know exactly what you're doing and when you're doing it. There's a good New World Order song I did once a long time ago. They see you when you're sleeping, they know when you're awake, they know if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. Yeah, a microchip will help them with that, if you're dumb enough to take it. U.S. Border Patrol agent was gunned down on the border responding to an alarm. Actually, 2 were gunned down, 1 died, 1 got wounded. Terrible, terrible thing. Nicholas Ivey, age 30, was killed. Doing his job under very trying circumstances because, the government decided to give illegal firearms to the drug gangs in Mexico. Thousands of them in Operation Fast and Furious. The big side is now, this BBC article where I got this from actually has a link to U.S.-Mexico gun running misguided and talks about the process so that at least it gets out into the public debate. But the poor guys on the bottom end of the stick pay with their lives. So that's one of the biggest questions I always ask organized law enforcement is, why do you cover for these guys? They kill your brothers. We don't have time to do 9/11 tonight. We're not going to be able to get into that. But a lot of stuff coming out on 9/11 that needs to be dealt with. Hundreds of your brothers died in that. You're never going to give them justice. You're so afraid. A lot of you are dying from cancers and diseases dropping like flies. So, of course, on the website, we did put up some stories that are rather important. Maybe I better low debt. Forgot to do that when I came in today. Usually I have way more spare time. Okay, that'll get us started. So we had a little niche with the banking system before the weekend, and we put out an emergency alert system little thing here to help people along, because hackers allegedly from the Middle East, they automatically blame Iran, and some people blame Israel. And I'm starting to think that, maybe it was something else, but some of the major banks in the United States, no one could get online because of a denial of service attack to do any of their online banking with some of these, big banks like Bank of America, PNC, Wells Fargo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So who did this? Was it hackers? They still use this, Innocence of Muslim film as a reason or whatever. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But one thing I do find out is we have an article here. Mikulski joins chorus calling for cyber security executive order. Senator Barbara Mikulski, Democrat Maryland, wants President Obama to issue an executive order on cybersecurity. We can't wait for Congress to act. Well, why should we ever bother with Congress, right? Who needs them? She's a co-sponsor of what's called the Cyber Security Act for better protection for the nation's critical infrastructure. Because we got all these terrorists just looking to take us down. Then we see the usual suspects sponsoring this bill. Senator Joe Lieberman, Jay Rockefeller, Dianne Feinstein, Senator Chris Coons, Richard Blumenthal. They're not exactly the usual suspects, but they're suspects. All call on the president to issue an executive order would set voluntary standards for operators of critical infrastructure like pipelines and banks, authorize companies and the government to share information about cyber threats. They say not they say, but we say, other people say, it burdens businesses and does little to improve security, which is of course what it is. Homeland Security Janet Napolitano says the order is close to completion. So you get this dog tag team thing, dog bites heels, heel kicks dog. Anyway, you get this thing where the president's going to issue this executive order. And then I have to ask, because this type of thing tears down all the constitutional framework that is the United States of America, just totally rips it to shreds and turns the system of government into like a rule by edict. But you have to ask people, like, what are you smoking? How are these people, especially Lieberman, Rockefeller, that goes back to way back, way back, generations. You're controlled by the Rockefellers, the Rockefeller Trust, and Rockefeller in the intelligence agencies, and Dianne Feinstein. These are the dismantlers of the United States of America, building a total and complete police state and a new world order. Does that mean anything to anybody? It's just absolutely disgusting. And that's on a good day. I don't know what to say about a bad day. When you vote these people, put them into office, well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's the other big thing. We're going to talk about elections and vote frauds and stuff like that. Maybe nobody voted for these people. And that's why they're elected, because nobody voted for you. Then it's getting dirty in the election. Of course, you've got to go to the British press to find out what's going on in America. But they released pictures of Obama's mother. And, she's supposed to have been basically Ann Dunham here as a, porn star and whatever. So she was in all kinds of magazines, bizarre, get the whips and chains out, the long leather gloves and all this sort of thing, based on a documentary that's come out, Dreams from My Real Father, which gets into the truth, where Obama and his story isn't exactly an accurate story. It turns out that maybe mother was involved with someone else, and that the substitute pitch hitter father was someone who was used. That's probably why they can't give you the birth certificate, because then it would show that he's a bastard child or something like that. And maybe that's just too much. It's okay if he's a commie spy, but don't be a bastard child. Be from Africa, but whatever. So maybe that's got a lot to do with it, and maybe that's very important. We do have a right to know. And they mentioned some other things in the British press that are almost kind of flattering because, I mentioned this kind of stuff on the Power Hour ages ago when we had, a lot of international spread on stuff where, some right-wing bloggers have claimed the scar on his head was evidence that he had undergone some kind of secret surgery. I wonder who could have said something like that. Gee, I don't know. But he's got a scar on his head that, really looks kind of bizarre, never mind the ones about his ears and things like that. So the word gets out there. The power of the spoken word travels through the universe, across the divide of countries and nations, and turns the paradigm over. So we have choices to make here, that we fight it out or we talk it out. A whole lot easier to talk it out. Get those words up front. Get the truth out. Let it float to the top. And sink those horrible, awful lies. U.S. Special Forces create strike teams in North Africa. So this one's kind of, sad. At the same time, like almost a year before Ambassador Stevens was murdered, they put together small teams of special forces to support American embassies in North Africa. Of course, his wasn't one of them. But then, they just say, well, it wasn't like we really sent like soldiers who knew how to shoot or fight or anything. They're just Delta Force guys who do crossword puzzles. And they were just there for, showing the flag and liaising with the Africans and stuff like that. But nobody would ever, raise a hand to actually do anything just because they're Delta Force. So we didn't, and the ambassador got killed. But that's okay, because we're going to have an investigation. We're going to look into it, and we probably found people who just didn't make it to the 9/11 Commission to be on that one, but they were really good, and we're going to give them a chance to figure out what happened here and tell a whole pack of lies, because Hillary Clinton told us to. So it's really working out well. See, this organization, which is the Delta Force, which are really highly trained in the top, the epitome of the American military, they were too new to respond to what's going on. Can you believe this shit? I hope not. Like, once you got out of boot camp, you should be able to be prepared to handle a threat or 2 or 5. Never mind, you went through a Delta Force training program. I would expect no matter where I put you at any time, even if I was pulling your leg and sending you, a surprise or 5, I'd expect you should be able to handle it, or you're no longer in the Delta Force because you're just no flipping good. And I hear from Agent 99 that these, top guards they had at the embassy compound or whatever where all this happened were paid like $4 an hour. Well, you expect them to get shot up for $4 an hour? What are you getting for $4 an hour? The crossing guard got laid off, so okay, well now you're in charge of security at the embassy. Oh, gee, thanks. So let me get my teeth out of the glass here and I'll be right in there. We're surprised that these things happen. So one of the other big things, like there are countries in Africa, a whole bunch of them. And let's see if I can find one here. This one's got a little map. Here we go. Africa. Yeah, that's the place. See, Libya's here. Egypt's over there, and then on the other side is where the big war is going to start maybe. But over here there's, some other smaller countries. Niger's on this map, but the one that's not lit up is Mali, and this is where a lot of American troops are, and French troops are moving into Mali too, special forces guys and such like that, because you just got this whole, just flip of sneak around, get in the back door so we can get closer to the war when it happens. So we're going to try to destabilize and work over the whole part of North Africa. Part of it is because we got all these horrible gangs. One of them's here, they talk about Nigeria way down here at the bottom. See, Nigeria's got this extremist sect called Boko Haram. And there's Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb, or AQIM. And their affiliates, they all have affiliates, I guess, register trademarks, affiliates. Terrorists need these things in the modern era. These extremist rebel groups are just laying waste to all kinds of problems, creating crisis. When you have a crisis, of course, we got to get a solution, the Orwellian dialectic there, and it works very, very well because we just have these extra special forces that we send into Mali, so they're perfectly prepared to move in any general direction to conquer the continent that we need. One of the funny things about Nigeria, not that it's funny for the poor people who are killed there or anything like that, but see, they don't have the Second Amendment, And they banned guns like a long, long time ago. So the only people who have guns are this, AQIM and other extremist group here to Boko Haram and then just go around and slaughter people hand over foot. It's an age-old recipe. It works every time. It's just absolutely amazing how effective it is. And then we have to ask ourselves, like, you know, what are you people on? Glue? Because it's just absolutely disgusting that we can be subjected to this over and over and over again and just eat it up. So we had a little birthday Google Doodle for Google's birthday. So we had NAFTA's birthday, and then we get this birthday. It was a cake when it started out. Looked like that. That one comes alive when you click it on. So we see the cake. The beautiful thing about the cake, we worked on that type of philosophy before. The Chinese did the moon cake, and the moon cake was beautiful because you could put a code in the cake. And then you'd cut the cake and arrange it in a certain way that it would have a message. So you could carry this cake across the border or across your checkpoint and get away with it because it's just a cake, and it had some characters on it that are meaningless and harmless until you cut it, arrange it in a new shape, and then you get the message. And after you see the message, well, then pour the coffee, eat the cake, goodbye message. Brilliant. Funny about the Chinese people, they are brilliant. So when I look at this cake, one of the big things that got me going was the fact that we got 14 candles. There's a song, 14 Candles by Plush Gun. Actually, several songs that they make. Pins and Panzers, Dancing in a Minefield. Those could be very pertinent songs to the global events that are coming up. Plush Gun, Pins and Panzers kind of implies that, you know, there's a little bit of war going on with the colored soldiers all over the place, just going absolutely apeshit. The song Dancing in a Minefield is 3 minutes 36 seconds long. Very important in numerology. Candles are 6 blue, 4 white, 2 yellow, 2 green. So of course as we slide down we see blue submarine number 6 is very pertinent in the gaming field. A lot of stuff about, you know, Earth changes, battles for supremacy of the planet. Is this something where the 6 blue candles are leading us to? The secrets of submarine warfare to start the Armageddon. The 4 red is the emergency light on the Xbox, the Xbox 360, and of course the numbers were in the previous piece there. The song is 3 minutes 36 seconds long, so we get a 3-6 again. And then of course this was published before the failure of the bank, so we had a big computer glitch. Were they telling us about the computer glitch in the bank? And we have the other candles, 2 yellow, 2 green, code yellow in the hospital, like it's hit the fan. And then the 2 green, Plan Green, was a very common event for some very important military plans. The United States had a Plan Green to invade Mexico. Back in the day, Pancha Villa. The Germans had a plan to invade Ireland. That was their Plan Green. The DEA used Operation Green Merchant in the war on drugs. It's a very common thing. So are they telling us they're getting ready for Plan Green, the attack on Iran? Then of course Google's 6th birthday was quite neat. 3 balloons, the number 6, 666. They're right on the money. We know who they work for. The military-industrial complex, as it's known. We posted a couple of movies on the website, conspiracy-cafe.com. I found the whole movie today, trying to help a chap with cancer, Dr. Brzezinski, the movie. Before we just had a short, had a lot of views on the short. Now the whole shamil is there. And then a classic one, if you're into the murders of the famous people in Hollywood, Death in Hollywood. Haven't viewed it, but it looks like a gold mine. Found that one by accident. We cannot allow things like that to escape. We need to know. We need to know a lot. We also talked about some time ago that there was potential. Let's see here, where did I lose this one? Oh, there it is. Can't read my own writing, but we talked about Romney and his secret tape speech, and we talked about you know, how Ehud Barak, the defense minister of Israel, was visiting Chicago. He was given a gift by Rahm Emanuel on September the 20th of this, you know, Goose Island beer. Something I wasn't too familiar about, but when you see the label on the beer, you know right away about the codes they're talking about. It's an urban wheat ale. It's brewed and bottled by Goose Island Beer, Chicago, Illinois, with their number 312 and whatever. And they make a highlight of the fact that it separates the chaff from the wheat. Very important biblical term, separating the chaff from the wheat. Perhaps we do that in the apocalypse. Then of course we have a nice view from Goose Island of the intended target, perhaps, and we mentioned how our presidential candidate, Mr. Romney, was talking about terrorists in Chicago at his secret tete-a-tete up here. If I were Iran, a crazed fanatic, I'd get some fissile material to Hezbollah and go to Chicago and party. So is he revealing the target unintentionally, Goose Island? Looking at Chicago, the target of probably something nasty that the FBI had to arrest their stooge with, because that's where they were going to get it going with our beer 312. They always talk in riddles, and riddles can be very interesting. Iran unblocks access to Gmail. They blocked it for a while, said they didn't know what they were doing. The Gmail is so connected to YouTube. They're trying to block YouTube because you can't say anything in Iran that they don't want you to hear. It kind of sounds like the United States. So they try to block everything. But the thing with, maybe religious zealots who may be controlling a country, yes, you must have freedom of religion, but you also must have freedom from religion in case the religion decides to be the state and impose its will on everybody else. Then we really don't have freedom. You've got to be free to do all kinds of things that may offend some other people from time to time, but that's what freedom's all about. The Iran Rial, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, is blaming enemies, and I hear from Agent 99 they arrested some 16 enemies today. Maybe we can get into that more later, but the currency has been taking a big nosedive. Economic Warfare 101 is working very, very well on these people. There's currency limitations on how much you can take in, how much you can take out. People have to buy a lot of foreign goods. Those foreign goods cost money in US dollars, euros, or whatever, and without that hard currency you can't buy any. So we have a big crash of their currency. And that can happen anywhere with any kind of paper dolls, because what are paper dollars? Paper. End of story. They can go up, they can go down. This can happen back in the United States tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now. It can happen in Canada, anywhere, because the paper is just paper. And when it loses its value, it's gone. So what do? Well, you have something else that's not paper, right? Maybe precious metals. So if a lot of these people had precious metals, well, they didn't have to run and panic to do a lot of things, because maybe their ounce of gold is now worth 1 million reals, or before it was worth 5,000 or something like that. Well, that can happen. Or you could trade it in to another paper currency that has much more value, because the value of the coin or material is what gives it value. Very important. Hezbollah chief commander killed in Syria, Ali Hussein Nassif. So the war isn't stopped. It's still going on. There's border excursions going on with Turkey. So, as I heard on the news coming into work, Turkey responded with artillery fire to a mortar attack that came from the Syrian side of the border. And then as I read this article here for today's show, then I realized, well, there were shots originally fired from Turkey at the Kurds in Syria, even before that, to get it started. So we have this tit for tat. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and totally out of control. And the next thing you know, because Turkey is allied with NATO, we have a massive big honkin' war going on. Then of course we had our big UN debate that happened in the interim. We have our good buddy here, Netanyahu, designing the Dr. Strangelove bomb. And we see this rather childish depiction of a bomb, and he's talking about how far they're going along their way, that they're up to 90%, and when they get to 100% they got the big nuke and they're going to blow everybody up, and that's probably a complete load of bullshit. A panel of former U.S. ambassadors, foreign policy experts, and retired military officers released a report detailing the costs and benefits of a military strike on Iran. It could set back Iran's nuclear program by 4 years, but would provoke retaliation by Iran and likely deepen its motivation to secure an atomic weapon, which is something I said on this show probably 2 years ago, just as it's just common sense. You can slow them down, but life goes on forever. It's infinity. So if you kick their legs out from under them, it's probably a good bet they're going to come back and get you. So when they do refine this nuclear material, they're going to do it to kill you. So right now, one of the conundrums is they have every right under the non-proliferation agreements to refine uranium, nuclear fissile material, 5% for research, fuel, study, whatever. And then we put sanctions on Iran. So one of these sanctions prevents them from getting medical isotopes, which are refined to 20%. So if Iran says they're refining their own medical isotopes to 20% because they need them. People, get sick over there. Even though the Prophet Muhammad looks after them, people still can get sick. People get sick over here too. And we have medical isotopes to use for medical reasons. So because we don't give them any, they're making their own, saying, Fangullah. So we've created the crisis that makes it look, well, they're refining nuclear materials. Well, yeah. So Ahmadinejad just said, give me medical isotopes and I won't refine them to 20%. Seems like a no-brainer. And I guess that's us, no-brainers. Because we won't. Keeps the escalation of fear going so we can pretend to have a war. So when Ahmadinejad gets to the United Nations and he says his piece, the big thing, he doesn't mince his words, he's talking about the New World Order. And do you get fried with that? That's what he wants to know. He's tired of U.S. bullying, so he wants to be in a nice, kind, gentle New World Order. The kind like the hippies sing about. The hippy-dippy New World Order. We just smoke dope, sit by a river, feel the karma, everything's fine, we make money. But that's not the kind of New World Order that you get with a New World Order. What you get is the iron fist, the steel-toed jackboot kicking you in the head, the trip to the happy camp. That's the kind of New World Order you get when you get a New World Order. You get fried with the New World Order. And they're probably not interested in that. Probably a lot of people in those three other political parties in the United States, the Constitutionalists, the Libertarians, and the Green Party, they probably don't want to get fried with the New World Order either. And they probably matured enough that they don't believe in the hippy-dippy, sit by the river, play the guitar New World Order that's been spewed by all these people for so long. So let's cut to the chase. And Alex Jones did this little story here, and figure one comes in bigger than that. These are experiments they're doing. You see, they have this truck parked beside this building with all kinds of monitoring devices, and inside this little room, which is called a gas chamber, they put in the fumes from the truck. That sounds eerily similar to what the Germans used to do to kill Jews. So the funny thing is here's America telling Ahmadinejad and the Iranians that you hate Jews and you're going to nuke Israel. And here's the United States is running an experiment on how to kill you with the poison gas that comes out of a truck, just like the Germans did, to put it in a gas chamber. Well, they monitor all these devices here. Mengele would have died to have equipment like that. Well, maybe not died, but you would have died if he had equipment like that. So isn't that an interesting conundrum? And then one of the little things mainstream media doesn't tell you about is, guess where in the world there are more Jews than anywhere else except Israel? Take a wild guess. Iran. And they don't put them in gas chambers. And they don't beat them up in the street. They're free to move around and do what they want. Practice their freedom of their religion. Isn't that amazing? So we're told all this shit on how evil the Iranians are, and it's not exactly true. So this article, 3 reasons the U.S. and Israel are lying about Iran. Netanyahu keeps trying to establish and talk about his red line. Now, I'm not worried about his red line. His red line isn't important. The red line that is important is the red line the Russians have drawn to say, you can't go any further. You're close enough. We've had enough of this shit. That's the red line that's important, because that red line is attached to their red button. And when they push their red button, tons of their missiles land on my head, and your head, and everybody else's head, whether we can respond in mutually assured destruction fashion or not. That's the red line that counts. That probably wasn't brought up in the debate either. So the U.S. and Israel admit in their own policy papers that Iran threatens Western hegemony, not Western security, let alone survival. In a 150-page document, Which Path to Persia, the Brookings Institution admitted that Iran threatens not the security of Israel or the United States, but the hegemonic geopolitical order the West maintains over the Middle East. So what they threaten is, them niggas is getting up in the bus. You niggas is getting up in the bus. You're not allowed to get up in the bus, you little sand niggas. We're going to hold you down, boy. That's the problem. The U.S. and Israel already struck first. Anyone who knows anything about anything knows they've been assassinating people. They got terrorists operating in Iran. They're kicking their ass 6 ways from Sunday. Right from the very beginning in modern-day Iran, they started with Operation Ajax in 1953, where the United States and the British governments overthrew a democratically elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. A guy named Roosevelt, I think, was involved in that one too, if I'm not mistaken, working for the CIA. I think Roosevelt's been around a long time. So the whole country is just a walking disaster because them niggas keep getting up in the bus, man. They don't listen. You slap them down. You know, they need a good lynching. We're going to get our missiles together and give you a good lynching. Don't be getting up in the bus. You're supposed to be good slaves to the rich white people. Israel's current leaders have Wall Street, London hegemony, not Israel's self-preservation at heart. That's point 3. The greatest myth is that concerns for national security and survival of the Jewish state of Israel, the overall foreign policy pursued by Israel government, has demonstrably run contra to both as the Israelis' people's survival and their own prosperity. See, the governments are working for the big corporations because them guys get up in the bus. So we're going to risk going to war and kill all you poor suckers because you're too stupid to understand that, because you want to get up in the bus too, so we lie to you with our controlled media. Nobody gets up in the bus. So in this article, the Israeli government is the greatest enemy of the Israeli people. Just to a great extent, our own governments are the greatest enemy to our people, we the people. That's why they take away our freedoms and our sovereignties, and they get big media to lie to us, and these parliamentary whores pass all kinds of laws to take away our rights and freedoms. And then, of course, they even mention that, you know, Israel and its corporate financier bankers upon Wall Street and the City of London, including the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and Al-Qaeda. Wall Street, City of London, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and Al-Qaeda. They're all like cousins. Create the crisis, create the chaos to bring the solution. Total power and control over the world by the elite rich. It's brilliant. Some German guy should have invented that. Oh, he did. George Hegel. Great tyrant. Pentagon planners. Israel's 3 options for an Iranian strike. Israel has 3 options when it comes to attacking Iran. The U.S. has largely been kept in the dark when it comes to Israeli plans. They don't expect it to come before November. One of the 3 scenarios is the Iranian Entebbe. Israeli commandos would storm Iran's Fordo nuclear facility and remove as much enriched uranium as they could, then plant explosives and destroy the facility. Option 2, bombing campaign targeting nuclear sites, strikes from sub-launch cruise missiles, Israeli-based range Jericho 2 and 3 missiles. Option 3, regime decapitation, simply remove the Iranian leadership. That would not end Iran's nuclear program, almost certainly trigger an Iranian response targeting U.S. military assets in the region. One sure way to U.S. officers whom I spoke with for Israel to get the United States involved was in its anti-Iran offensive. And we hear again from our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Marty Dempsey, 15-page report here, Capstone Concept for Joint Operations Joint Force 2020. The world is headed to a dark place. The military needs to plan accordingly. It's giving subordinate commanders more power and trust to carry out their missions independently. Having globally integrated operations. Now, this independent control means the reason you have to be independent is because there's no chain of command. One of the reasons there can be no chain of command is because there is no chain of command, because they got blowed up, sir, in the first strike. And it's just what survived as part of the mutually assured destruction that carries on. So these subordinate commanders have to have the power to run because everybody else is dead. That's a dark place. Well, it'll be light for a while, a few milliseconds, the bomb goes off, it's light everywhere, and then it gets really dark. Nuclear winter comes in maybe even. Most joint operations are back on track in Afghanistan, goody, goody, goody. But we can see that General Dempsey went back to Afghanistan on a secret trip. Didn't announce it, didn't tell anybody. They talk in the article, they were afraid of reporters. What he's afraid of is he probably didn't want the Israelis to shoot up his plane again like the last time. Not too good. And of course we were talking about troops pouring in on the Iranian-Syrian border. The Saudis buying nuclear-capable missiles, but that's okay. Brazil's got a nuclear program too. Nobody's lining up out there to get those guys. Jordan on the brink, the Muslim Brotherhood, that's supposed to be happening probably before the next show. Maybe some of this October 10th, you're going to see these people take to the streets and do the regime change tango in Jordan. Demonstrators are lined up for that. And then this one is just absolutely crucial, because it just totally changes the paradigm. U.S. preparing for a post-Israel Middle East. Congresswoman Elena Ross-Lehtinen, Israel's most ardent agent cheerleader in Florida, wants to tighten up all these sanctions and everything on Iran, wants to be, the bitch child of Netanyahu, but unfortunately another guy's in line for that one. So they've done some studies in this paper, preparing for a post-Israel Middle East, an 82-page analysis, saying that the American national interest is fundamentally at odds with Israel. Israel is currently the greatest threat to U.S. national interests. Its nature and actions prevent normal U.S. relations with Arab and Muslim countries, and to a growing degree the wider international community, and maybe even the Russians with that little red line. This was commissioned, this report, by U.S. intelligence community, 16 intelligence agencies with an annual budget of over $70 billion. Department of the Navy, Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Defense Intelligence Agency, Department of Energy, Homeland Security, State, Treasury, Drug Enforcement Agency, Federal Bureau of Investigation, National Security Agency, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, National Reconnaissance Agency, and the Central Intelligence Agency all participated in this report. It's quite long. You probably won't have time to get into all of it, but I think we've got into the nuts and bolts here to saying that the party's over. This is what they're advising. The party is over. Billions of dollars in direct and indirect aid from U.S. taxpayers to Israel since 1967 is not affordable, subjected to by U.S. taxpayers. U.S. public opinion no longer supports this. It is a gross violation of American and international law to do a lot of the things that are being done over there. And really, it's America's responsibility, under responsibility to protect innocent civilians that are being steamrollered by the Israeli military. So that's a real, stick of dynamite going off as reports go. It's, a whole change, a complete and total change. But of course, we don't get to hear a lot of those changes because, we've got mainstream bitch media, and, I guess that's a nice representation in this little article. 3-time Emmy Award-winning CNN journalist, mainstream media takes money from foreign dictators to run flattering propaganda. So these are the bitch whore mainstream medias. But what we had here is we had this fine young lady here who did a lot of work on CNN. And she did a report on activists that are silenced in Bahrain. Her name is Amber Leon. Very pleasant looking young lady. And she actually told the truth. So what did CNN do for her? They fired her ass. They're under a lot of pressure from Bahrainis and their lobbyists here in the United States. So they just fired her. So now CNN gets paid by Bahraini leaders to show propaganda on their channel, to turn journalism into an infomercial. Other foreign countries like China and other totalitarian regimes do the same thing. Isn't that cute? Well, she's cute. What they do is evil. And she had the heart of gold if she stood up for people who are being oppressed, even at the price of having to be thrown on her sword. In America, journalists are considered terrorists. Government pretends Americans value freedom of the press, and journalists are treated as terrorists. In this article, American journalists are an endangered species. If you criticize those in power, you're smeared by the government, targeted for arrest. The core things which reporters do could be considered terrorism in modern America, targeted under counter-terrorism laws. Al Jazeera journalist is held at Guantanamo for 6 years, interrogated about the Arabic news network. Well, you could probably just watch the news and find out what they think or do. You come here and watch me, I tell it all anyway. There's nothing to figure out too much. So if you write about the truth without a middleman, you're harassed. And they use Julian Assange as one of their examples. And they say he should be prosecuted. Well, even though the New York Times has released far more critical material, stuff that was labeled top secret, and seemingly Wikipedia never did reveal stuff that was top secret. They're trying to pressure Bradley Manning into saying, you know, him and Julian are trying to take over the world like Pinky and the Brain, and they're going to lay waste to whole villages of undesirables if they can get all this stuff put together. So in American law, under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, they have something called communicating with the enemy. And they try to apply this to anyone who reveals anything from a whistleblower, to say, well, because you got some confidential classified information, the enemy could read it because you posted it somewhere, so therefore you're indirectly communicating with the enemy. But one of the most important things is this is the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Like, we're not in the military and we're not wearing uniforms. So these laws shouldn't be applying to we the people. But it also tells us something, because if you're communicating with the enemy, the primary target of this information is we the people, the broader public. So that is telling us that your government thinks you are the enemy, and that your free press is a liability to them. So one lady they talk about here, she was a plaintiff in what they're calling the Homeland Battlefield Bill. The National Defense Authorization Act is making it an offense, so that, of course, you can be the real enemy. Anyone in American society, popular examples like Daniel Ellsberg, Chris Hodges, Naomi Wolf, when a judge hearing this case on the National Defense Authorization Act asked U.S. government attorneys 5 times whether journalists like Hedges could be indefinitely detained simply for interviewing and writing about bad guys. They hedged and hedged, but the bottom answer is they said yes. So you voted for those people, or the voting machine voted for those people, they got into power. It was just awful. So one of these persons who does a lot of articles like that says they'll refuse to talk to anyone who's with Occupy Wall Street. And in writing, they'll refuse to talk to anyone who was at Guantanamo. They'll refuse to talk to Julian Assange. They'll refuse to talk to anybody who even remotely can talk about anything because they're afraid. And the only thing I can say is, what the hell country are you living in? Pussy? You see, back in 1776, somebody had to stand up to the king and just say, the hell with that shit. That's enough. A long time before that, even, there was, someone we call Christ who stood up to Rome and just said, that's enough. You're going to have to nail my ass to a cross before I'll back down. And they did. And we have to pay for this over and over and over and over again with all the challenges as Satan tries to take over the world, as the devil tries to take over the world. Every time, he's going to make it a crime, an offense to do anything good. Doing good will become evil. And you're going to have to face the monster down. And if you don't, then you have to live the rest of your life on your knees groveling, or you have to stand up It's like Alex Jones says on his show, the only answer to 1984 is 1776, and Americans have that right. MSNBC story, it takes $26 to hack a voting machine. 2011 article. 8th grade science education is capable of having that. $1.29 microprocessor, circuit board that's $8, $15 for the remote control. You can modify votes for up to a half a mile away. So when you're going to the polls and you see a stinky looking little van somewhere, some guy with a remote control within a half K, and you're worried about the electronic results, you know, a little poured gasoline and a match could probably fix that problem really, really quickly. The old Louisville Slugger was always good back in the day. 2009 NSBC article. 5 county officials, circuit court judge, county clerk, election officers accused of blatantly causing election corruption. Charges laid, convictions registered. MSNBC removes the article from their website, so the author finds the convictions on the FBI website. In a powerful HBO documentary, Hacking Democracy, which we have posted on the website, conspiracy-cafe.com, you can read about that. 1992, there's a great book published, VOTESCAM, exposed how they fix elections from way back. It was something called the Voter News Service. The daughter of these two chaps who are deceased now, one of them was running for Congress in Florida, the other one was his campaign manager, found out that they fudged all the votes, even way back when they were running for public office. Back in the 70s. So what the TV would do, hand in hand with the people rigging the vote, is put out projections as the real votes. And in these guys' case, after those projections were revealed on the news, they never got one more vote after that. So the guy originally got 30% of the vote. They said he only got 15, and it stayed at 15, and he never got one more. So how could anyone be so popular and never get another vote for the rest of the night? So they looked into this stuff big time. Their name was Collier, Jim and Ken. Unfortunately, both deceased now. Both people who should have been leaders in a government of the United States, for and by the people. There's just, you know, no reason that they shouldn't be there. These guys were the best. They still are. Their daughter is still running stuff. Then I'm going to post the full video because we're not going to have enough time tonight. Aaron's got to go to sleep. But this, there was a battle in the United States. August 1st, August 2nd, 1946. Some of these veterans that went to this foreign war called World War II found out that they were fixing the votes. One of them was running for public office. And they were being hassled by the cheesy sheriff and a corrupt government and administration that went right to the top. It's amazing how high this went up. Even with these other chaps, the Colliers, like they went to Janet Reno when she was in Florida in government to complain. She couldn't lay charges. She said, I can't. It'll upset the whole power structure of the United States of America. Nothing's changed except for one thing. The Battle of Athens is forgotten. The judge who looked after that case with the Colliers in Florida is now sitting on the Supreme Court of the United States. You see, sometimes shit floats to the top, not truth. But that's okay. He's allowed to do that, isn't he? Because no one will fight the Battle of Athens. In the Battle of Athens, they made a cake mix called Freedom. That cake mix worked like this: 3 M1 Garand rifles, 5 Model 1911 pistols, 24 Model 1917 Enfield rifles, other guns, and some dynamite. And you know what? Freedom reigned. It was like a repeat of 1776. So I'm going to show you a little short on that. A shorter short than what I had. I'll put the bigger one on the website so you can watch that. We'll do this one.
On Election Day, August 1st, 1946, shooting broke out at the jail in Athens, Tennessee. The battle that ensued was a battle for liberty from machine politics, a battle to reinstate the rule of law. For nearly half a century, Tennessee had been controlled by various political machines. Memphis Mayor Ed Crump controlled a statewide political machine. The machine that controlled Athens in McMinn County was run by State Senator Paul Cantrell and the sheriff, Pat Mansfield. In the spring of 1946, Athenian veterans returning from World War II saw the illegal activity and decided to put a stop to it. They entered their own slate of candidates in the upcoming election and promised the people of Athens that the election would be fair. On August 1st, Election Day, the GIs set up poll watchers at voting precincts all around the city. Just before voting started at 7:30 a.m., one of the poll watchers asked to see that the ballot boxes were empty, as the law stipulates. He was denied. All day, poll watchers around town witnessed illegal voting activity. The deputies even denied a black man the right to vote and shot him as he persisted in arguing his right. Whenever a poll watcher objected or resisted in an attempt to uphold the law, he was injured or arrested. At 4:00 p.m., the voting ended and the ballot boxes were taken to the jail. When the poll watchers asked to witness the counting of the ballots as the law stipulates, they were again denied. By 9 o'clock that evening, the GIs had armed themselves and taken positions around the jail. A shot was fired around 9:10 p.m., and the shooting didn't end until 3:30 the next morning, when the GIs used dynamite to blow off the jail's porch. When the GIs entered the jail, it was obvious that the ballot boxes had been tampered with. Only one remained sealed. The votes in that box favored the GI ticket 3-1. A few days later, the GI candidate for sheriff, Knox Henry, was sworn in. The Battle of Athens was the defining event that brought around the destruction of machine politics in Tennessee, thus restoring the rule of law. When Sheriff Mansfield resigned, the McMinn County machine was virtually destroyed. The GIs taking a stand against the political machine controlling them gave other reform-minded citizens the idea that they didn't have to submit to the tyranny of machine politics, and inspired them to challenge their local machines. It also demonstrated to up-and-coming politicians, such as Estes Kefauver, that the machine's strategies had become vulnerable. 2 years after the Battle of Athens, Kefauver's U.S. Senate victory and former Governor Gordon Browning's re-election marked the end of Ed Crump's statewide political machine. Though Crump still remained active in Memphis politics, he never again controlled statewide elections. The GI's stand at the jail in Athens was a fight for liberty that restored the rule of law in Tennessee politics.
So a great little piece of history, something lost. The democracies, the freedoms, they all grew out of a barrel of a gun, unfortunately. No one gave us our freedom. We took it. And the elite rich want to take it back. That's why they go after gun control. The UN Small Arms Treaty passed while the media sleeps. That's another little here. They want to implement a plan of action. And the international tracing of firearms all over the world, of course, so they can ban them. Some of the states that are really big on this are the states that don't have guns anyway, and they have horrible crime problems, wars, all sorts of things. One thing I've highlighted here, one man was arrested as he came forward and said that Fast and Furious was all about arming drug cartels in Mexico, never about tracking them. So he got arrested for telling the truth, blowing the whistle. So they say they reaffirm the right of self-determination of all peoples, and then put in all kinds of colorful language to say we give you all this. And with the other hand, we take it away anytime we please. The only thing to stop them from taking it away, of course, is we, the people, having access to arms. And unfortunately, the veterans are even better if we have access to veterans, because they're the best at using the arms. So they knew how to make this freedom recipe. 3 M1 Garand rifles, 5 1911 pistols, 24 Model 1917 Enfield rifles, other guns, and dynamite. And they won back freedom in their community. And a whole bunch of tyrants were cast aside. They fixed the election. They still fix and rig the elections today. Everyone's crooked. There is no honest vote. It's all manipulated, completely and totally, because no one's got the guts to say enough's enough. Because the ultimate law of the universe, unfortunately, is might makes right. And with their laws, they maintain the might. And until we, the people, wake up and exercise our right, then we'll have the might, and we'll have it back. Means you got to stand up. Sometimes means you're going to get hurt. For the vets, this was just a little Saturday night having some fun. They've been in a real war with a real enemy. This was child's play. But they pissed off the wrong people. They pissed off these loyal veterans who are running for public office, who are honorable, decent, true Americans. And that's what they got. They got beaten up, pushed around, and arrested until finally they said enough's enough. In the documentary I'll post on the website, I'll do that as soon as I get home, because you can watch it, because they made a movie about this, and it's very telling. Just the 13-minute segment it brings tears to your eyes to watch this. So as they're assembled in the street and their rights are taken away, One of them looks at the leader, and I think his name was George. Good name. He says, "What do we do, George?" And he looks back at him and he says, "You got the keys to the armory?" The guy goes, "Yeah." It's over, baby. And you know what these veterans did when they were finished with this battle? They cleaned the guns before they put them back. How's that for honest, reliable, dependable citizens? And if you're an honest, reliable, dependable citizen, you come here to Conspiracy Cafe, you come here to that channel, and we'll tell you things that'll bring tears to your eyes, tears of joy, as we wrestle the New World Order down to the ground and increase the capacity of the debate to go beyond the BS that they feed us. Feed us too. There's a donate button there. You can always mail something that we can cash up here in Canada to the studio. I'll be glad to receive it, because we the people have to support each other in being we the people, or we will collapse, and you will never get a second chance unless you fight for it long and hard. Not a place you ever want to go. The best fight's the one you don't get into, and the reason we have freedom of speech is so we don't have to get into any kind of fight. We can just talk it out instead of fighting it out. Far, far better option. So Aaron's got to go to bed early so he can get up early tomorrow. If you feed me more money, I can do more shows, longer shows, 2 or 3 a week or whatever. It's all up to you, we the people. I'm doing my part. I come out here all the time. But we the people is plural, not singular. So anyway, we thank that channel for hosting the program. We thank you for coming out. We'll be here Tuesday night. We'll do it some more. Every life we save is our own. Every battle we don't get into is a bonus. Thanks for coming out. Good night.
About the crime, no one looks behind the curtain, and no one questions why. The only time we got is right about now. I cross my heart, I take the vow, I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end. Tonight's the test.